South Africans were left stunned today after Parliament was abruptly and unprecedentedly shut down following a furious verbal confrontation between Patriotic Alliance leader Gayton McKenzie and President Cyril Ramaphosa, a clash that transformed what was expected to be a routine post-budget policy debate into one of the most explosive moments in the country's parliamentary history. What should have been a structured exchange of policy positions instead descended into chaos, laying bare the deep political tensions simmering beneath South Africa's fragile coalition government and raising serious questions about leadership, decorum, and stability at the highest level of the nation's democracy. The incident reverberated far beyond the walls of Parliament, igniting intense public debate about the erosion of parliamentary etiquette, the increasingly aggressive tone of political discourse, and the growing perception that South Africa's legislative institutions are struggling to maintain authority and order in a time of mounting national pressure. The drama began when Gayton McKenzie rose to speak during the second round of the budget policy debate, and true to his reputation as a blunt and provocative political figure, he wasted no time launching a fierce and unapologetic attack on the president and his administration. In a speech that was as incendiary as it was personal, McKenzie accused President Ramaphosa of cowardice, branding him an enabler of corruption and an ineffective leader who had failed to act decisively in the interests of ordinary South Africans. His words cut sharply through the chamber as he declared, at full volume, that the president was weak, that he greeted the wicked while turning his back on the starving, and that the nation was not broke but broken by what he described as Ramaphosa's silence. These remarks immediately triggered outrage from the African National Congress benches, where MPs began shouting over McKenzie, heckling him relentlessly and attempting to drown out his accusations. Despite repeated calls for order from the Speaker of Parliament, the chamber grew louder and more hostile by the minute, with tensions escalating rather than subsiding. The situation reached boiling point when President Ramaphosa himself stood up, visibly shaken and unusually emotional, to respond directly to McKenzie, a move that marked a rare and striking departure from his typically measured public demeanor. In a sharp and confrontational retort, Ramaphosa dismissed the PA leader as a political opportunist masquerading as a revolutionary, accusing him of hypocrisy and empty rhetoric, and alleging that McKenzie spoke of the poor while socializing with billionaires. His words only added fuel to the fire, and at that moment any remaining semblance of structured debate collapsed entirely. What followed was not parliamentary discourse but a complete breakdown into disorder, with MPs leaping to their feet, shouting insults, pointing fingers, and trading accusations across the chamber as the speaker struggled in vain to restore control. Security personnel were placed on high alert as the shouting intensified and the exchanges grew increasingly personal, with words like traitor, hypocrite, and enemy of the people hurled freely across party lines. The House descended into a deafening din of rage and defiance, with conventions of parliamentary behavior utterly ignored and the authority of the chair openly challenged. Unable to reassert order or dignity, the Speaker ultimately took the extraordinary step of ending the session prematurely, an unprecedented decision that underscored the severity of the crisis and sent a powerful signal about how far the situation had spiraled out of control. As MPs filed out of the chamber, the tension did not dissipate, with reports of shouting matches continuing in the corridors and staff forced to physically separate lawmakers to prevent altercations from turning violent. The pandemonium unfolded live on national television, and within minutes clips of the confrontation were circulating widely on social media, where they quickly went viral and dominated online discourse. Platforms such as Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook were flooded with reactions ranging from outrage and mockery to praise and despair, while hashtags like #Ramaphosa vs McKenzie, #Parliament Meltdown, and #SA Crisis trended rapidly, reflecting the depth of public engagement and concern over the spectacle. Public opinion was sharply divided, with McKenzie's supporters hailing him as a fearless truth-teller who finally dared to confront the president directly, arguing that he voiced sentiments shared by millions of frustrated citizens who feel ignored and betrayed by the political establishment. Many praised his confrontational style as a necessary shock to a system they view as stagnant and disconnected from reality, insisting that someone had to shake the status quo. On the other side, Ramaphosa's allies and supporters condemned McKenzie's behavior as reckless grandstanding, accusing him of undermining the dignity of Parliament and cheapening the legislative process for personal and political gain. They argued that his actions were not an act of courage but an irresponsible bid for attention that distracted from the serious work of governance at a time when the country could least afford it. Political analysts and commentators weighed in throughout the day, with many expressing alarm at what they described as a clear symptom of deeper systemic dysfunction. According to prominent analyst Zeno Luthuli, the events in Parliament represented not just a collapse in etiquette but a raw and unsettling glimpse into the fragility of South Africa's political leadership, warning that the coalition system was under immense strain, the economy was bleeding, and public frustration was reaching a breaking point. He cautioned that if such tensions were not addressed constructively, confrontations of this nature could become normalized, further eroding democratic institutions and public trust. Opposition parties also reacted swiftly, combining condemnation with calls for accountability, as both the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters issued statements urging a formal investigation into the conduct of both McKenzie and Ramaphosa. The EFF criticized the president for failing to maintain presidential dignity under pressure, while the DA argued that McKenzie's inflammatory language created an environment in which effective governance was impossible, with both parties calling on the Speaker to invoke disciplinary measures to restore order and uphold parliamentary standards. Beneath the spectacle, however, many observers noted that the confrontation symbolized a much deeper crisis of confidence and legitimacy within South African politics, reflecting widespread disillusionment among citizens who feel that coalition infighting and personal rivalries have taken precedence over addressing urgent social and economic challenges. As parliamentary civility continues to erode, particularly in moments meant for serious national policy deliberation, the scenes in the chamber were interpreted by many as a mirror of the anger, exhaustion, and anxiety felt across the country, especially in communities grappling with poverty, unemployment, electricity blackouts, water shortages, and rising living costs. For countless South Africans watching from home, the image of elected representatives shouting and trading insults was painful and demoralizing, reinforcing the perception that leaders are more invested in political theatrics than in crafting tangible solutions to alleviate suffering. Social media posts captured this frustration vividly, with citizens demanding food, jobs, and stability rather than what they described as fireworks and ego battles, lamenting that politicians bicker while ordinary people continue to struggle. Civil society organizations and constitutional watchdogs added their voices to the growing chorus, calling on Parliament to reaffirm its role as a pillar of democracy grounded in respect, accountability, and principled debate, and warning that unchecked incidents of this nature could deepen polarization and further weaken confidence in the democratic system. As the dust settles on one of the most tumultuous parliamentary sessions in recent memory, the country is left grappling with unsettling questions about the future of its politics, wondering whether this confrontation marks the beginning of a more confrontational and unstable era or serves as a wake-up call for leaders to restore dignity and focus on governance. With elections on the horizon and trust in leadership already at historic lows, many fear that unless meaningful change occurs, scenes like today's may become increasingly common, signaling that South Africa is entering a stormy new chapter defined by volatility, division, and an urgent struggle to reclaim the spirit and substance of democratic leadership.